Okay, good. So how did you find out about me?
You know what, in the first place, folks, this is Royce, the Redneck Radio Man, and I'm starting my show without my usual intro because I just made the mistake of starting it with the wrong intro. That was Babylon 5. So I do apologize for that, folks, and I'm getting off on the wrong foot today. However, I do have with me Thomas Stryker, and he has a new book out called Extra-Planetary Experiences, and we're going to be discussing this book. I found him on Amazon, and I was reading the description for his book, and it really kind of got my attention because this is a subject that I've studied for many years myself, and it's a lot of stuff in here that I thought that perhaps you guys would like to hear him talk about and share with you. So, Thomas, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing great, Royce. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you and your listeners. I hope we get a few calls in and ask some questions.
That reminds me, Thomas, while you're on that, before we get carried away talking and I forget to do it, a lot of people are listening at Shoutcast, iTunes, and other locations. For you people, if y'all would like to call in, the call-in number is 832-632-7904. You can also come to www, pardon me, folks, so a lot of moisture in the air, .paranormalpalace.com, and you can ask questions in chat or call in. You can also PM me at Skype on Mr. Paranormal, and I can add you to the conversation that way. And if you want to know a little bit more about Mr. Thomas Stryker, his website is www.thomasstryker.com, and I'm going to do my best to get this mentioned again as the show goes on, and I'm going to paste this in the chat room for people that's in there looking at it right now as we speak. Thomas, I do want to thank you for reminding me of that because so often I've had a bad habit of getting off into the conversation and getting lost, and then I'd be halfway into the show before I realize, oh, hey, nobody has the number.
Yeah, good.
But, yeah, I wanted to say, why don't you kind of give everybody an idea how you got started with this book? What was your interest in this particular topic?
Well, that goes back a long ways into my childhood, basically. I'm 57 years old. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and now I'm living in a small town in California called Nevada City, which is a little east of Sacramento. It's in the Sierra foothills. And this topic has always been a passion of mine for probably since I was 10 to 12 years old. And I just didn't know how I could ever deliver a message about this because it was such, a topic that was on the fringe. The name of this book is called Extra-Planetary Experiences, Alien Human Contact and the Expansion of Consciousness. And I'm the writer. I'm a PhD in psychology, and I worked with a number of PhDs putting this book together. And the latter half of the book is filled with interviews of people that I believe have had this extraplanetary experience, such as, Edgar Allan Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell,
right,
the astronaut.
That was interesting when I saw that because he was on my show back when I came through.
Oh, really? Oh, that's wonderful. I just really like Edgar. He's just a fantastic person to communicate with because he's so knowledgeable.
I was about to say, he's got an impressive knowledge bank.
Yeah, and then plus with his experiences, it really tallies up. So I got together with Edgar to start this off. I should say Dr. Mitchell. I mean, we got to know each other pretty well after all these interviews and time we spent together. And we called Dr. Mitchell's interview an Apollo Samadhi. So, of course, he was part of the Apollo missions. And, he went to the moon, of course, and he walked on the moon, then he came back. But he's still, to this day, unraveling that experience. That happened a long time ago. And so the Samadhi part of it it's just like an overwhelming type experience that he doesn't really have all the answers for, even to this day. And he goes on to talk about that in the interview and what it was like for him to have this type of experience. But the other parts of the book are filled with. It gets a little bit more spellbound, I think you might want to say, as the latter parts of the interviews goes, because they get a little bit more out there. When I say out there, I mean a little bit more esoteric, we go from there to My Journeys to Alpha Centauri with Norma Milanovic, who's also a PhD and has written a number of books on her experiences of going to other planets and having spirit guides. So she really goes out there and talks about her alien human experiences on other planets. And then we go on to the crystalline towers of Marilyn Hughes, out-of-body experiencer that recalls going to many other planets and being with other alien entities, in different experiences. And then we go to Gary Northcott's Domes of Mars Arctic Circle, where he believed he had a few experiences of going to the planet Mars. And then we went to Alexandra Stark, Another Time, Another Place is what she called her experience of going to another planet. And then there were two more, A Stranger in a Strange Land, Richard Kuykendall. It was a long-time experiencer. He started having experiences when he was a child, and now he's up there in his 50s. And a lot of these people are just kind of, not all of them, but most of them are really coming out of their closets with their experiences because they're feeling it's safer now than it was even 10 years ago to come out and talk about these things, because it is getting a little bit more accepted by a larger population. As disclosure goes on, let's say, a lot of people signing petitions to find out from their governments, including our government, hey, what are those UFOs about? We want more information. Why is there such a cover-up? So it's getting opened up, and I think more people will be able to talk about it more openly, and that's why I wrote the book at this time, too. I think it's a key time to bring this out. And my last interview was with Ingo Swann, the professional remote viewer at the Stanford ranch out here in California. He I don't know how many experiments he had, but he was one of the best remote viewers that we had in the world. And so he recalled his mission to Jupiter, which was an experiment he did at the Stanford Ranch here at the Stanford University. And he really had a detailed interview, and he even brought some of his old manuscripts that he had from the Jupiter experiment, which was back in 1973. So I think it's a really interesting book, and I start off with some of the historical events, of people going or, saying they went to other planets. I start off with Angelucci. He was mentioned in Carl Jung's Flying Saucer book. Carl Jung was a famous philosopher and psychologist, back in the 30s and 40s, 50s, 60s. I think he died in the 60s. And he wrote one incredible book called, Flying Saucers. It was written in German because he was from Switzerland. And was translated, and we certainly brought him in because he was such a famous philosopher. And in the latter part of his book, he mentions the otherworldly experience of Angelucci, and goes into detail about that. So that's got me going on, starting to look at, there must be more other people that have had these accounts. So through the years, I've collected these accounts, starting with Orfeo Angelucci, and going to Adamski. A lot of people know about these people that have had experiences on other planets. We go to Billy Meyer, Claude Vorillion, who goes by the name Rial now, Lamsong Rampa with his visit to Venus, and on and on. So I use those books as an historical backdrop, if you would, to lead up to the more recent ones. And there's a lot of commonalities between these experiences, what they report and how it changed their life. So what I'm basically after is how these experiences have changed their life. And every one of them, every one of these people that have had this experience had dramatically changed their life in a certain number of key ways, like perhaps having less fear of death, having greater cosmic awareness, being aware that there's a bigger picture out there than we're used to. Living on the earth and just thinking that's it. And, also opening up to the possibility of there being other intelligent life in the universe. And some people have experienced that there.
Some people don't want to accept that.
Of course, yeah, and that's okay. I think it's just for the people that, maybe have had different types of experiences, or maybe have just in general more open to that kind of phenomenon, can, maybe be more curious and accept some of these things that other people have had. So it's not like we're not pushing anything down anybody's throat here. We're just trying to open up to a broader spectrum of consciousness that some of these people have had.
Okay. Well, listen, we've had a question in the chat room while you was explaining that, and I think now would probably be a good time to throw it out there.
Sure.
The question is by Jen, wants to know, do we live among them? And she was referring to aliens and spirits.
Do we live among them?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all part of your own personal consciousness. That's what I say to people. It's like, if you want it to be part of your reality, it probably could be part of your reality. If you don't want it to be, it's not going to be. It's that simple. Like when you go within yourself and try to find answers for what's maybe going on outside of you, there are answers could be there for you, like deep states of meditation. People have found that they've gone deep inside themselves and they've found a lot of answers there. So to answer Jan's question, I guess I would say is like it's subjective. It's up to the person where they're at. Where is their reality left at? Because basically, I think we describe our own reality. We live our own reality.
Yeah, that was pretty much covered in a book by another psychologist named Kirby Surprise recently called Synchronicity. And he believes that everybody creates their own individual reality through synchronistic events, in other words, or synchronistic events, should I say. And it was a very interesting theory that he's got. I read the book, but we're not here to go into that, but I was just commenting that you're not the only author and psychologist that is looking at it from that angle, in other words.
Yeah. And my personal belief is, that I feel that, yes, I believe there's other intelligent life in the universe. So that's part of my reality. So I just accept that, and I have experiences I feel in my life that have, given me credibility to believe that. The evidence that I have for myself that leads me to my belief in what's happened and knowing what's happened. So, yeah, to answer, if Jan's asking me that question, I would say, well, of course they're with us. They're among us. Yes. If she's asking me that personal question to me, yeah.
All righty. Now, I was going to ask you also about Ingo Swann, because I had one of his associates on my show before, Lynn Buchanan. You might have heard of him. He was also a remote viewer over at Stanford, if I remember correctly. And I was wondering, did Ingo mention anything to you about the fact that about cities on the moon or Mars, anywhere like that? Because I never even got a chance to ask Lynn.
Oh, okay. Well, Ingo's a fascinating individual. I really like him. I know where he lives. I visit him in New York City. And we had a number of discussions. I read most of his books, and that's what I would basically start with, is to read his book called Penetration, The Question of Extraterrestrial and Human Telepathy. It's an excellent book, if you can get a hold of it. He goes into pretty much detail about what's going on the moon or what has gone on in the moon. So a lot of the answers to your questions are in his books. And then get To Kiss Earth Goodbye is another good one of his, if you can find it anymore. A lot of these were written in the 70s, and so he's had an incredible life and he's had incredible experiences, so I would read his books.
Okay.
My best best thing to say about Ingo.
All right. Now, Jim was also asking, why would the government go through a great deal to cover the truth with the contact consciousness realities? She wants to know, is it because they have a plan like the NWO or something else?
What does that stand for, BMWO?
No, NWO, New World Order.
Oh, New World Order. Okay. Put your fears aside for a moment, and think of your own personal friends right now, and what you've experienced in your life, and that's what you're going to attract. If you want to attract evil entities, you can. You know how to do it. I think we all do. And the same thing goes when you're dealing with this reality, with extraterrestrials. You can attract some really dark entities, or you can attract some real benevolent light energies, and so it's up to you to decide what you want to do, and maybe sometimes it's habitual. People don't realize what they're attracting, and sometimes you need a friend to help you with that. And that's that's a good thing to realize. Sometimes we need help to attract light beings, instead of dark ones. So, getting back to this question about the cover-up, why would the government do that? Because I don't care what anybody says. If there was, if there was a mass disclosure, there would also be a mass panic. Because people are just not ready. We have a term in psychology called ontological shock. When you experience something that your psyche just can't handle, you just shut down. You go into shock. And I definitely think there would be an ontological shock if all of a sudden extraterrestrials made themselves available and made themselves appear, in other people's realities. I think they're really intelligent beings. I'm talking about, most of the beings that, that I'm talking about are very higher intelligent beings than we are, and they're not into scaring us. They're not into making us do anything. They just want to see us evolve if we can. They're not there to, take us off course or anything. They're here to observe. And some do assist, but, not much, because we're going to create our own realities, And if we decide, well, yeah, I think I do need some help in maybe understanding that there is other intelligent life in the universe, you might get some help with that. Go into a deep state of meditation about that and, see what happens. And, I think it's there. I have no doubt in my mind. When people ask me, do I think there's other intelligent life in the universe, I say, of course I don't think there's other intelligent life in the universe. I know there is. So it's that simple for me, but I wasn't always like that. I mean, I had a lot of doubt, and I really didn't understand it, what was happening until I got older and I kept working. I had years and years of education that helped me unravel a lot of the mysteries that I was working on. And a lot of that came with deep inner work. I'm a meditation practitioner, I'm a yoga practitioner, I'm a Kundalini yoga practitioner, and I spend a lot of time by myself, with, trying to understand and unravel some of the mysteries within, you might say.
Interesting you should mention that about the mysteries within, because the one thing that I've seen different, because, there's been in my research a lot of stuff about whether or not the church, maybe at some point in time, knew that there had been, like, say, ancient astronauts, for example, but did not want it known and maybe even covered it up or suppressed it for reasons of their own. Because the thought occurs to me that from what you're saying, as well as from what I've heard from other authors and researchers, there are two definitely distinct different doctrines between the church and extraterrestrials on spirituality. The church, for example, says you should worship God, and they're the middleman to God. He's an outside being. He's separate from us. Whereas ET is always, most of the ones that I've heard about, is always encouraging for you to look for God inside of yourself, which would naturally kill a religion if you did it and it worked, if you think about it. It makes me wonder, maybe the church maybe wanted to cover up something like that for that very reason. I wondered if you might have had any opinions on that.
Well, of course, I got a lot of opinions on everything. But I guess I could say it's short. For if you want to hear the short end of that, is like the old verse goes, "The kingdom of God is within you." I repeat, and I'll just be honest with you, I'm not a Bible thumper. In fact, as a child, I never really believed in the Bible or the biblical God. So, my parents, they really wanted me to, but I just really couldn't relate to it. So I always thought it was a great narrative, and the Bible, was stored in my bedroom, basically on my bookshelf, but I didn't really believe in it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I used to be a Sunday school teacher, but I left the church, and I went with Hermeticism and alchemy and Gnosticism, because I thought that I don't attend to any particular religion, but I'm talking about as far as belief structure goes. What I like about them is they are for seeking the kingdom of heaven within them, because from my perspective, that's what Jesus said to do anyway. But I was just thinking maybe the church may not have wanted ET, publicized much for the fact being that they had a different doctrine from them.
Yeah. Well, I think, you're right on, is that, that's one of the reasons I turned away from the Bible and the church, is because the church was proselytizing that life originated on Earth, that Earth was the center of the universe, and there was no such things as extraterrestrials. And here I was, at an early age, interacting with beings from other worlds who seemed much more advanced than anything here in this world. So, but I was scared. I kept it a secret. I was in fear of being criticized and possibly even ostracized from my own society. So I didn't say anything for a long time.
You are indeed, though, a contactee. So maybe you'd like to share a little something about what it's like to be a contactee.
Well, I guess I look at it more as my extraterrestrial friends, contactee. I guess you could use that word if it feels better to the audience, but I'm a little bit more personal about it now, because these beings, I call on them quite often to help me through particular moments of my life where I kind of lose a sense of direction. And I go into a meditation, I ask these beings to help me through, and they usually always are there. And that's up to me to decipher what they're trying to tell me.
So it is possible to establish contact through meditation for almost anybody who wants to?
I would think so, yeah. I'm not anything special as far as that goes. I think anybody could. But, it is a matter of opening the mind, and that takes, some time. Because, we're just talking religion alone, can really skew the mind, to a certain way of thinking that, no, this can't exist because it's written like this. It can't happen, And then there's a lot of damnation and demeaning that can go on if we go outside those realms. So it's a long process. It's not an easy process. Maybe you yourself have experienced some of that too.
Yeah, I did. When I first started researching ancient alien theory, I kind of felt like I was doing blasphemy for doing it.
There you go. Exactly. And the guilt, the shame comes in, and that usually stops most people right there. I can't go on with it. I can't stand myself. I feel like, not being true, or whatever, so people stop in their tracks, and that's it. It's over.
Yeah, so, well, it's easy to understand how that happens, I got to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now also, I was going to ask you some more questions over here about the inside of your book here. You was talking about, you contextualize these counts that you got from these other, these experiencers like Edgar Mitchell with the 19th and 20th century reports, as well as alien-human encounters in Samaria, Vedic, Egyptian, Tibetan, and biblical records. So I take it that when you compared them and put them in context, what did you find, that there was a lot of matching in the descriptions of the experiences?
Well, there were themes. I did something in psychology is called thematic content analysis, and basically what you do, you read the things, and you pull out themes. You read through it many, many, many times, and if you read something that you really enjoyed reading, you read it a few times, certain things kind of stand out. You know what I mean? And for me, it was like, I'm looking for themes, so I'm going to really make them stand out. And what I found was that, there were a lot of similar themes to the old historical accounts, to the new accounts. And then I basically have a chapter devoted to that, basically stating what these similarities are. And I go into great detail on these similarities, and I call them common themes and then less common themes. And then how these changed people's lives, and what were these important life changes that people were having? I mean, was that consistent? And what I found out is that there was a lot of consistency. I don't know if you're interested in hearing any of these.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to hear some of them?
Sure.
Okay, well, here, one of the experiencers was saying that this, there's all different categories, and let me talk about some of their paranormal skills, esoteric beliefs, messages for humankind. The other experiences, they came out with a message. I think this is really important to us.
Wait, before you go any further, though, are you by any chance on a cell phone with a battery that might be weak?
No, I'm not. Am I getting weak?
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, you ever hear a speaker when the woofer cracks, it kind of gets that little blare? You're getting that kind of blare when I'm listening to you. Sometimes you're getting it, sometimes you're not.
No, I'm listening to a regular phone, landline phone here.
It could be with all the weather. There's some wet phone lines.
Oh, darn.
But yeah, let's just go ahead and continue on, I guess, and try to make the best out of it.
Well, there are some important things I mentioned in the book about the messages that these people, these experiencers, have for the audience, basically, right now. For the people that are trying to help understand them, too. Everybody wants to be understood. So Richard here says, eventually the sun is going to get bigger and the earth is eventually going to be vaporized. So we need to be working toward a way to go somewhere else. So his experience is going to other planets. He says, maybe that's why we're starting to reach out, going into the cosmos further to find a new home, in however, maybe millennia, maybe 1,000, maybe only a few hundred years. We need to start exploring other worlds to see if we need to move. Now, the Marilyn, the out-of-body experiencer, she was saying, the extraterrestrials are trying to be very quiet. They're very quietly leading us into our subconscious minds, to higher places and higher thinking. But it can be one or the other, total destruction or an age of peace. It could be that extreme. There again, we create our own reality. Which ones are you going to be working with? It comes down to. Edgar Mitchell said, it is not acceptable that we humans are warlike and are threatening our own species and our very own existence on this planet by multiplying the way we are. We are not on a sustainable path. So there's a number of different messages that these people had, but as far as the common themes were, I picked up about 25 common themes. Between the historic record and the newer ones, And all these people, starting at number one, they all were able to articulate a very clear, deep, rich, and meaningful narrative. In the books that I brought out in historical events, they were very clear about what they were trying to say. And, that must have been very difficult for them in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And same with these people now. They're really articulating, I think, pretty well, a phenomena that's not really understood. And I noticed that, all the participants were able to, describe the planet that they went to, this planet, moon or star, that they went to, in great detail. And they were able to articulate the experience they had on it. Everyone had basically believed that there is other intelligent life in our universe. They all, believe that. Now, these are important events, I think, that have happened. And all these people have, been inside a spacecraft. I'm not saying an extraterrestrial spacecraft like Edgar Mitchell, okay? He was inside a U.S. spacecraft. Everybody was experienced seeing or being inside a spacecraft. They all basically said they've seen a landscape, of a different planet, that they visited. Either it be, reddish brown dirt, that it was different than the Earth.
Right.
It was a different landscape than you see here. They all came out with a different attitude, basically about themselves and about the world that they lived in. It just really changed their mind about a lot of things they took for granted. They just realized that they didn't know as much as they thought they did.
Right.
And they all describe these changes in consciousness. They're all. The other important part, I think, to remember here is that they all had some desire to be of service to humanity. If it was just to I just want to share my experience with others, but they all had that kind of drive, to be of service and not to just stay within themselves with the experience. They wanted to share the experience. in some way. Although a lot of them had a difficult time sometimes describing and articulating exactly the message that they wanted to give people, but they did it. I have it in written form here, so I think all that's pretty interesting. And then, of course, everybody reported utilizing, ESP or telepathy or something like that. And even telepathy, paranormal type of sensory perception.
I know that Edgar Mitchell, now, he came back after he was in space, and he got so involved in this that he founded the Institution of Noetic Sciences, and he's been studying. He has his own consciousness model. Also, you can see an article on it from his website. So, the mind and the consciousness and the soul have become a main point of focus with him, in other words.
Yeah, because of that Apollo Samadhi. Remember what I was telling you? He's trying to unravel that yet, and he's doing it in such a scholarly way. I really like what he's doing. Yeah, doing it very scholarly. There are parts about these common themes that I was finding. They all had, intuitive information, gut feelings about what they were doing. It wasn't just like out of their head feelings. They were in touch with their emotions.
Yeah, that is something that I have noticed, because, I've had people on that had been contactees with Syrians and Pleiadians, and the one thing that they always share is that it has to do with your spirit and your soul. I've been told that Pleiadians were light beings by more than one person. I've never, actually had the experience myself, but from what I've heard, and I've talked to Mike Horn, he's the guy that, handles a lot of the stuff for Billy Meyer.
Right.
And he'll also tell you the same thing, that it's, E.T. is really trying to get humanity to, give up war and work towards peace and to develop spiritually. So, I know that at least a section of E.T. out there is getting a bad rep.
Yes, you got that right. And I think there's a reason for that. To keep people in fear. You got more control over people that way. So you got to look at, those aspects of humanity, what we do to each other. That's why I'm saying go beyond those barriers, get more into the transpersonal aspects of your mind and go within yourself to find the answers.
Yeah. I think one of the answers, if you stop and think about it, is who is it that stands to benefit a lot from war? Who has their hand in almost every war that's ever been, and they wouldn't be doing it if they weren't getting something out of it, in other words, since time immemorial.
Well, just think of the financial gain in war, making all those armaments and guns, missiles, warships. My God, trillions and trillions of dollars being made. Okay? So, yeah, it's a big business.
Yeah, really big business.
Multi-trillion-dollar business,
And then, teaching people spirituality would kill war, and it'd kill a multi-billion or trillion-dollar business. And
there you go.
It's just not
same with the drug industry.
Yeah, same with the drug industry. And I heard that it was the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers that profited from that, but that hadn't been confirmed, at least by me yet. But that is what I've heard.
Well, when you think of capitalism, it's starting off, where was it, in Ireland or England, with the tobacco trade, where they enslaved people basically to make profits. And that slavery is still continuing. We just don't realize how a lot of us are being used as slaves. Think about that.
That is true. Oh, also, did I hear you mention Marilyn Yu's name earlier?
Yeah, Marilyn, she's one of the interviewees.
Yeah, I didn't see her on your list, on your show description or your book description.
Really?
But I heard you mention her name, and I recognized it because she had been on my show before.
Oh, wonderful.
And
she gets around. She's been on a lot of shows. I know when I met with her in Colorado to do the interview, she was really informative about all the, shows that she's been on. So she's really getting out there with her work, which is good.
Well, I was going to say, I've been to her website, and for anybody that wants to go to Marilyn Yu's website, you can Google Marilyn Yu's. I don't have the link in front of me. I do have her in the archives with the link there. You don't want to talk about somebody with tons of material and videos and articles about spirituality, about the early church, about E.T., about the connections of everything and the whole 9 yards. She's got a website plumb full of that. But one of the things I did want to mention for you while you were here is I noticed when I was at your website going through it, you got a program going on that's called Divine Spark, which is doesn't have anything per se to do with E.T. However, it's a worthy cause that, I wanted to congratulate you for taking the time and effort to go through this here, because something like this is really needed, and I thought maybe you'd like to, tell the listeners about it.
Oh, well, thanks, Royce. That was nice of you to ask. Yeah. Back in 2000, I started up a nonprofit because I wanted to be more of service, and I think a lot of this had to do with my ET experiences, because I'm trying to bring out also these common themes where I'm saying that people like to be more of service. Well, I feel really good about doing service work, especially to people that are marginalized, you know what I mean by that, or discriminated against, such as homeless people, people that have been genocided, like Native Americans, people of color. And so I really, I'm an advocate here in my little town here in Nevada City for the homeless. And boy, I'm up in city council meetings just really challenging them. How come we're not being able to provide for these people? Why are they continually being marginalized? And I know what that's about, because I was marginalized a lot myself, not for color or poverty, but for my beliefs. That's why I said I really learned that the difference between the mystic and the schizophrenic is that the mystic knows who not to talk to. So I hope you know what I mean by that, is that I learned really quick on that, yeah, I had some valuable experiences, but I had to be really careful who I talked to about it. Yeah.
If you're not really careful about it, they'll put you away in one of the farms, you might call it. For
yeah, right. So I had to be really careful. And then Divine Spark actually started off on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. I went out there one time because I was doing a master's thesis on spirituality, and I was studying Native American spirituality, and it took me out to that reservation, which has incredible spirituality, I learned, but it had spirit poverty also. So I was just appalled at how these people were living, the original people of the plains, living in these, moldy, old, mobile homes, and it was pretty disgusting. And so I wanted to do something about it. So I said, well, I don't have a lot of money, but I can do something. I can maybe get help and start a nonprofit and create greater awareness. That's kind of like my pet peeve, if I have one, it would be, is to try to raise awareness. It doesn't cost a lot, to raise awareness. It takes some time. You got to write, and just like I'm doing right now, I'm hoping I'm raising some awareness or raising consciousness about extraterrestrials and life in the other intelligent life in the universe. It just means I have to be able to articulate it and be able to present it in a way that people understand it or try to understand what I'm saying. So that's how Divine Spark got started, to try to raise consciousness. So basically the mission statement of Divine Spark is to be of service to poor and in-need people everywhere. So we really like doing the work, and we have some really good volunteers, and we don't make a whole bunch of money, but we help a lot of people. And it feels good. It feels really good.
Well, it's nice to know that somebody out there is getting help, because so many people need it, and nobody's lifting a finger to help them.
There you go. Yeah. That's got to change as far as I'm concerned. And I think that, ET consciousness is helping me get a hold of that and what to do. I'm very tenacious, and I think that they've helped me be tenacious, because that's what it takes. You got to just hang in there, hang tough, and don't give up. That's what I'm learning. So it's been working. Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind me mentioning it while you're here, and you just touched bases on it a minute ago about, people not hallucinating, some of them, rather than hallucinating or having a spiritual experience, and it's just being accredited to that. It really was an interesting thing to me, because in the near future in May, I'm going to have a Seth Farber on my show, and he's got a book called The Gift of Madness and the Failure of Psychiatry and the rise of the Mad Pride movement. And he's talking about the fact that a lot of people that are, say, for example, schizophrenic or diagnosed that way or bipolar or whatever, there really are people that, well, they have a spiritual intake, but they never matured spiritually to learn how to, cope with it, to fully understand it and fully share it. And that's why it's coming out that way. But it kind of goes along with what you were saying, and I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of times we would call those, like where I went to school, a different way of looking at those experiences would be a spiritual emergency. Somebody has a psychotic episode or something. Now, if that person goes in, to a hospital, they're going to fall under the American Medical Association, in which they're going to probably be diagnosed as, hallucinatory or psychotic or whatever, and, they could be diagnosed and given prescription medication. Now, those medications are heavy duty. I'm just going to be straight up with you. Sometimes that's the biggest problem about how the mental illness industry is working with these people.
You don't even want to start me on medication.
Okay. Well, maybe you've discussed this with your listeners already. But it's one of the biggest problems that we try to get people off, okay?
No, I'm agreeing with you. You're absolutely right. What I meant when I said you don't want to get me started is I have a real big beef with the psychiatry industry and their little partnership with the RX drug company and how they're turning disorders into the new market of tomorrow. I mean, it's becoming $1 trillion business.
Well, it's already past that point. And, the new diagnostic statistical manual will even have more in there, so everybody will have some sort of illness, okay?
Oh, yeah, they
can prescribe
every
medication.
Year, I think it is. Mm-hmm. To the disorder manual you're talking about, I read they add to that every year, and they're coming up with stuff like, what was that one, road rage disorder of some kind?
Sure. Yeah, whatever.
Internet disorder, and I'm like, my God, can't everything be a disorder?
To them, they would like that, because that fits right into their model, and so that being the pharmaceutical model, right? So they can,
make the
build
money.
The empire, the pharmaceutical empire, is greater than it is, and it's already great. I don't know if you ever went to visit any of these places, but they're huge, like small cities that make these drugs, so. Yeah, they've done very well as far as producing pharmaceuticals and getting top money for it. So it's something we need to educate people about, no doubt. And there's good books out there that do educate people about it. They're just kind of hard to find. One good one I would suggest would be "Your Drug May Be Your Problem." It's called, and the subtitle of it is "How and Why to Stop Taking Psychiatric Medications." It's very point blank. It'll just tell you how it is. Okay.
Yeah, once you've gotten
written
on them,
by a psychiatrist and a psychologist. So.
I was going to say, once you've gotten on them, I think I've been heard that you have to come back off from them slowly.
Yes.
Or you can go through serious withdrawal effects.
Yes.
But yeah, I've seen a psychologist or a psychiatrist out there that is bucking the system, and he's been at it for 30 years and doing a heck of a job. And I wish I had his information here in front of me, but I didn't save it. I was going to say also that Jen had asked another question. She was wanting to know, did your ET contactee give you any messages or events that will happen, like say in the future, part by saying to help others? In other words, like any prophecies, I guess, or any other types of messages?
Well, this is the way I view it now, and I don't have just one contactee. I would say these are my extraterrestrial friends, spirit guides. So there's many of them, and they're all pretty much in agreement that we are more than these physical bodies. So we have to get past that, and that's what I like about a lot of these people that are reporting in my book. Like especially Marilyn Hughes. Her out-of-body experiences are a good example of how we are more than our physical body. If we just looked at our physical bodies as just being really a container, for our soul or our mind, that, that's up to you to believe what you want, but if that lived on past, as your body deteriorates, what our bodies are good for maybe 100 years, right? if that long. But then if we kept realizing that we lived on, it's not just a death, it's gone, but it's also just a change. It's a transition. So we could be, if you want to believe this, is that we are as old is. And that's what we can access, I believe, through meditation and yoga, is you can access that ancient ancestry that's there.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Oh, yeah. And I used to teach my kids when I'd have Sunday school at home that we were all immortals. I said, we're all created from energy. It can be neither created nor destroyed. It's always been. It's always going to be. You're totally immortal, always existed, maybe not in this body, but, somewhere down the line, some form, somebody, something, and you always will. In other words, that you just can't change that.
Right. But and to answer the question, I think maybe even more accurately is that I really believe in the energy of love and that we are love light beings, and really that it's the most powerful energy of anything out there. So we go back to that. We continually go back to that. We can struggle with the two if we want and fight it, but it's there, and it's, like I said, the most powerful energy that in the cosmos. So it's always there with us, and I think that ETs have really helped me understand that.
So then the reason...
But the light will always prevail over the dark, so...
The reason that this is an important work to you is because of the importance that it has for humanity and for peace on Earth, if I understand this correctly?
Well, we're all in this together, as far as I'm concerned. Not just me, not just you. Everything I do affects everybody around me, and vice versa. So I'm thinking if we could just start thinking and doing things a little bit more positively, and really searching for the light. I'm not saying, we all have our bad days, right, where darkness seems to rule, but, through the darkness, we see the stars, you might say, right? It's like, when it really gets dark out there, all of a sudden you see a glimmer of light, and it's like, oh, I get it. I had to go through that kind of hard struggle there for a while to see another part of myself and how resilient I am and how I've been able to conquer this many, many times before in the past. I think we need to be reminded of that. Just how, like I said, how resilient we are.
Okay.
Because we are very resilient. We are sentient beings. We are light beings. We are energy beings.
Are you going to be writing any books in the near future, any follow-ups or, anything of that nature?
Well, I am going to, follow up on this book. It's going to be called Further Along, the XPE. I want to abbreviate Extra-Planetary Experiences now with an X, a P, and an E, so we can get down to really discuss this more and bring in more experiences, and photographs and artwork of people that have gone to other planets and what that's been like for them. Because I know it's kind of hard to visualize for a lot of people. So this first book here does not have any artwork or photos. It's just like I said, mostly about those interviews and what people are saying about it. The next book will be more extraplanetary experiences combined with artwork and photos. So that's in the makes now. I haven't signed on a contract yet with any publisher yet, but I'm sure if this book isn't even out yet. It's not out for 2 weeks, but if it sells well, believe me, the publishers will be calling me, to take on the sequel. So we'll have to see how this one does first, but I'm hoping it's going to do well. Okay.
Now, I was also going to ask you, do you have any other things going on? I don't know, workshops, conferences, meetings, anything that you'd like to let my listeners know about?
Well, I'm always engaged with different facets. I'm right now I'm trying to get into the Parapsychological Association. I just applied today. And I'm trying to reach larger audiences on parapsychology issues. And I'm trying to get, I have a series of events called Going Within and Finding Your Inner Truth. And what that means. I just discussed some of that with you already about, states of meditation and things. But there's other ways of accessing your inner knowledge, your inner truth. And so I have workshops on that, and I get, some other people to talk about that, and some people talk about, let's say, the medicine wheel. I go into other cultures and try to extract ways of how people have gone within themselves. And I like that because in other cultures, they do things differently. that we're not used to. Like, I work quite a bit now with Native American cultures, and I'm really getting into the medicine wheel culture. What's that about, and how we can use the medicine wheel to access antiquity within ourselves. It's all these old ways, old, like shamanism. Are you familiar with shamanism?
Oh, yes.
Working with spirits. That's older than any religion we have, okay? And certainly older than Christianity, So, they've been doing this for a long time. Some of these ceremonies that I attend, are thousands of years old. And they're still being done the same way as they were thousands of years ago.
That is very true. And I mean, it was even being done, like you said, over here in Americas by many, many Native American tribes long before America was discovered by the people on the other side of the ocean there. I mean, the truth is, they were like, well, who is this Jesus Christ? What is Christianity? Was more
right.
Like that, because it was a big surprise to them. They'd been looking for God on the inside ever since time immemorial.
There you go. Good example. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was the same thing with the people in the Rig Vedas, the Mahabharata. If you go read some of these older scriptures from China and other places, you'll see the story's always the same. That long before Judaism, long before Christianity, or long before Mithraism, or even Zoroastrianism, there was always these forms of, looking for God on the inside rather than on the outside. And, you were speaking about Egypt and Samaria in your book description there, but a lot of this stuff originated in Egypt, if I remember correctly.
Well, see, I don't look at it that way. I think a lot of this evolved on other planets, then came here. I don't see the Earth as being that old, and really it's not scientifically either. The Earth is only 4.5 billion years old. It's not very old in comparison to other planets in the universe. So we gotta realize that Earth is a relatively newer planet.
No, I gotta love the way you put that. 4.2 billion years is not old. And here I am at 52. I'd like to make it that far and consider it not old.
Yeah.
I am so sorry. I couldn't help that one, Thomas.
Yeah. But, I think it's all accessible is what I'm trying to say, too, is that our antiquity is older than we think. I know it's hard to, imagine it, but that's a good place to start, is try to imagine it. Try to imagine the Earth as it was forming, and there was life already in other places, okay, and that's how Earth, got its life. I never believed in Darwinian theory or any of that. That to me, that was all a bunch of garbage that somebody was trying to sell, So I have different views of how life started here, and I'm not saying mine are right or wrong, but they're good for me. It really resonates within my being, okay, and that's good enough for me, even if I never shared those thoughts, it just helps me feel really solid within myself.
Well, see, I think for me, that's the important thing, is that you're true to yourself. Because it's like I always told everybody else, if you can't be true to yourself, how can you ever be true to God?
There you go, yeah.
And it has to always start with you. And the only way you have a real reality is with total honesty. And it doesn't matter who's right or wrong, so much as that honesty factor. From there, everything else can be learnt and, added to as you go.
Yeah. But, I think we all do our best to try to be honest with ourselves. But sometimes, there's things that get in the way because of our
ego,
inability to process other information at the state of consciousness that we may be at. And it just takes time. Truth, in a way, is very subjective. Everybody has their truth. My truth, and where I'm at, might be different than your truth and where you're at. So it's, we got to be careful when we use the word truth because, it's somewhat subjective to a person's experience. And that's fine, because then we realize that, okay, I'm not going to mess with anybody's reality. That's not my job. I'm not here to mess with your reality or any of your listeners. I'm just saying, here's some ideas. See if this works for you. You know, take it to your dream world tonight. You know, dream about some of the things I'm saying and see if it resonates with you tomorrow. You know, that's all I do. You know, I just try to expand or try to bring up new ideas to see if it, you know, is something that could possibly be acceptable to help the person live a more meaningful life.
Right. Well, I think that's a pretty good point of view, actually. You know, the more I listen to you about that, because, you know, you stop and think about it. If we each have our own truth, maybe it's because we each have our own reality. Maybe both truths are true, only they're true for the individual person and their individual reality.
That's the subjective part, right. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and you look at it that way, can there actually be a right or wrong in that particular type of situation? And I don't know if I can answer that question, but I think it's something to contemplate on for me. No,
I don't think so either. You know, it's the right or wrong part. No, that could just put us into shame and say, oh, God, we're terrible beings for believing that way. I mean, there's a lot of things I've changed through my 57 years of being on the planet here. You know?
Yeah.
I don't think the same way about a lot of things. You know?
I'm with you on that one. So
yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's like 4 minutes to 9. We've been on here for almost an hour. I wanted to mention to everybody real quick, once again, that your website's www.thomasstryker.com, and you can find out more about him, his Divine Spark, his book, other events he has coming up. I think he's also got some articles over there. He's a very fascinating guy. Matter of fact, you listeners have been saying that in the chat room already about him behind his back. I just made it to his face.
Well, thanks, listeners. I appreciate you.
Don't forget to tell your friends to come back and see us. I'm going to go ahead and cut Thomas loose since it's getting to be 9 o'clock, and since I got to get a kid up and get him off to school tomorrow, which I'm glad school's going to end in May. At least, and he's only got 1 year left, so when that happens, I can free up a lot more. But, Thomas, it's been a real pleasure having you here. I've enjoyed speaking to you, and I'd love to have you back, especially when you get your next book finished and get ready to do that. If you want to come back and share it to my listeners, by that time, I ought to be back up to scale quite a bit.
Well, Royce, I look forward to that, and I really appreciate you looking me up and inviting me on.
And I appreciate you. Of you. I do appreciate you coming, and you've been a very interesting guest, and my listeners in the chat room have they weren't too bashful to say so. I'll be in touch tomorrow with some links, or tomorrow or the next day, to where I've archived this show at, so you'll be able to go back over there and listen to it or share it on your site or, you know, whatever you want to do with them. And I'll keep your contact info. And, again, thank you very much, and I've enjoyed having you.
Same to you, Royce.
Uh-huh. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody. Just wanted to remind everyone real quick, like before I let y'all go, not to forget to come back to Saturday's show. And this Saturday, we are going to be, let me open this up and take a look again. We're going to be talking to Mr. James Barrett, and it's going to be about the Shroud of Turin. And he says he's got in his book, he's told us about a code that he has discovered inside of it. He calls it the Silent Gospel. And I don't know a lot about it. I haven't seen his book personally. But it's the actual idea that there's a hidden message in the Shroud of Turin is of interest to me. So I invited him to come over and tell us about it, and he agreed. And that's this Saturday at 1, like usual. I also wanted to remind everybody to click on the Friends link in the menu on the left, and I've got some people listed there, some great social networks. If you scroll down to the one that says United Paranormal International, I'm also the South Texas director at that one, but I'm a member of each one of those communities, and they've been very friendly and nice with me, and they're very knowledgeable people. Also, I got a link over there for radio favorites if y'all want to see what shows the Redneck Radio Man would recommend for you if you're interested in checking out more than one show when you got extra time. I got people over there like Micah Hanks and Jim Harold who have also been on my show, both of them at one point in time or another. And in fact, Micah Hanks is going to be returning in the near future. And I also got UKPN Radio on there, and he's been on my show before at Blog Talk Radio, and he's got an interesting show. So I put those links up for everybody's benefit in case they wanted to check them out. And if you scroll down to Strange Lights Publishing Presents 2012 UFO Paranormal Summit, in the very near future in June, Anthony Sanchez has invited me to speak there to his speakers. He wanted me to interview them and take questions via Skype. So it's going to be a video thing. He's going to have a flat screen TV. I'm going to be going broadcast to the flat screen TV. It's going to be a 50-inch LCD TV. Everybody in his audience is going to be able to see it. And I'm going to be posting a notice to all the groups for people that to ask questions that I can ask Anthony, or not Anthony, but whoever I'm going to be interviewing when this interview comes up. And I'd appreciate everybody's participation in that. Now, with that, with no more further ado, I'm going to go ahead and call this show quits, and we'll talk at you guys Saturday. Thank you for coming, and I wanted to let you know you couldn't have a show without you. I need my listeners as well as I need my guests. Thank you very much, guys.